Now go into the basement and fetch my witch's skin hat.
Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today is Halloween, or if you're not watching this the day I release it, today is a day. And I thought it would be fun to release this video, one last spooky build before Halloween or on Halloween. So I'm giving it to you one day early. Today I thought I would build something from a TV series on Hulu called What We Do in the Shadows. It is kind of like a spoof documentary type thing, and it follows vampires about their daily life. It's kind of filmed like The Office, how they like interviewed people just doing office stuff. They're just filming people doing vampire stuff. So that is the premise. Laszlo is one of the characters within the show, and he has this fancy hat made out of witch's skin. And I thought I would make it because why not? Today we are building a witch's skin hat from What We Do in the Shadows out of foam. Let's get to building. Free template in the description. Let me start by prefacing that this is by no means an exact copy. I definitely drew inspiration from the original design and changed the shape on the top just a little bit to be a little more universal. I think this pattern without the skinifying steps could make for a pretty awesome shaped hat for all kinds of costumes, not just witch-hating vampires. I made a pattern using the foil and duct tape method, transferred that to poster board, and then scanned it in my computer on an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of paper. I have a video on how I make templates that I'll link down in the description below if you're interested in the process that I skipped here. The pattern is usually uploaded the next day after a video goes up. Print out the pattern, cut it out, and then trace it onto your material of choice. Here I am using 6mm EVA foam. Once traced out, it's time to cut the bits out. The opening of the hat is scaled to fit my ginormous head, which is rather large, so you may need to scale it down if you have a normal sized head. No 45-degree angle cuts, it's just all straight up and down, so it shouldn't be too terribly difficult of a build. Make sure to use a sharp blade, as EVA dulls the tip of hobby knives pretty quick. To help the top of the hat curve more and get closer to the final shape, I am heat forming it a bit by hand. Really, I just need to curve in the horizontal direction, so I'm not going to push it against any round object this time. I get asked a lot if you can use a hairdryer to shape EVA foam, and I would say probably not. Typically, hairdryers don't get hot enough to make the foam pliable. If you're considering doing any EVA fabrication, you should think about investing in a heat gun. You can get them for pretty cheap at Walmart, Harbor Freight, or Amazon. I found some when I first started for under $30. It really does help with limiting the amount of pull on the seams so that you can get less gaps in the end result. Assembly is pretty straightforward as it's only 3 pieces. I applied contact cement to all the edges, let it sit up for a few minutes, and when the parts are no longer wet to the touch, I attach the pieces together. I like to close up the large V-grooves first, which are called darts. This helps the sections take on more of a curve. Then with both halves closed up, I use those U-shaped registration marks all over the edges to help me line each side. The top of the hat attaches to the top surface of the brim. As I work my way around the brim, I try to keep the registration marks lined up and keep the inside surface flush with each other. Any parts that sit proud of each other can be sanded back flush later with a rotary tool. To cover up my seams and to give the appearance of a wrinkly old witch skin sewn together, I'm using some air dry foam clay. There are lots of different kinds with different qualities that you can purchase out there. I've got like 6 or 7 different brands at this point, and I'm trying to work my way through some of the older stuff. I was tempted to use this gap filler stuff, but I didn't think I had enough in this small container to do the whole hat. I really like it. It's some pretty cool stuff. I wet the foam clay in water to make it more pliable, and after drawing some reference lines of skin panel divisions, I start mounding bits up here and there. I really didn't pay super close attention to my reference image of the skin folds. I just kind of pushed it all over the place, mostly trying to cover up all my seam lines that may be visible. After I'm done sculpting, I let it dry for 24 hours. Two coats of Plasti Dip. The paint job started dark with brown undertones using some acrylic paint, and I slowly worked my way up to some lighter browns, pinks, and peach colors. I made at least half a dozen passes and added splotches of red, blues, and yellows to give the skin tone variation. To knock off the paintbrush strokes, I would hit the surface with a sponge in between layers. The great thing about the painting process is that you can just keep adding layers until you're satisfied with how it looks. Once my witch's skin was at a disturbing enough level, I hit my panel line recesses with a little dark red paint to make it look like it was bleeding a little. To sell the look even more, I busted out my leather stitching kit, pulled out some black thread, and began hand stitching the entire hat panel lines with the thread. I intentionally made the stitching sporadic and uneven to make it look more handmade. I've done this in a few builds and always love how the small touches of real stuff kinda sell the fake bits a little more. It's easy to push the needle through the foam, but you need to be careful pulling through your paint layers. You could cause the paint to separate from the foam if it starts to kind of stick to the needle a bit. I went slow and didn't have to do any patchwork, but you may need to if you pull the primer layer of Plasti Dip off. I know it looks fast in the video, but that's because the video sped up about 3 or 4 times the actual pace. The last step is to put feathers in his hat. I bought a couple of pendants to see which looked best as a cap off to the feather bunching. I like the darker one more, so that's what I went with. As far as feathers go, I was kind of limited to my local hobby store supply, which was a pretty small selection, so I just kind of went with what I had. The feathers on Laszlo's hats are red, black, and I think some decorative patterned long brown ones. I got relatively close, but I didn't have the length that I really wanted. I just started building up layers and hot gluing bits down until I liked the shape. Then I hot glued the full assembly to the hat and called this build officially done. I hope you enjoyed my spooky builds this year, and I can't wait to see what deals I can pull in the after Halloween sales everywhere tomorrow. Happy Halloween, everyone, and hope you have a great week. finished. Here is the end result. Overall, I think it turned out pretty creepy. Definitely something that will make you wonder why it's sitting there. I really like how the stitches kind of pulled it together and made it feel a little bit more legit, even though it took quite a while to do all the stitching around the entire thing. It wasn't too bad pushing through the foam though, and this little fleur of feathers on the side kind of fancifies it up a bit. Yeah. Maybe you will try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to pull something from a TV show that you watch all the time and you think is pretty hilarious and you just like want to have something cool to freak people out with. Yeah. Maybe you'll get some...
Yes, very good. Thank you. Top work.
And inevitably, they're going to ask you, how'd you make that? Give them one of these. Tell them, much props. Guess it's time to go out on the town. Hopefully no bad things happen. Peace out. Ugh. If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and want to see more builds like this one, please consider joining these awesome people listed here with me over on my Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together.